the night streets with no destination. Where am I going? Is it safe to go back? Where can one go? The city at night closes itself against you. Cars are parked, doors are locked, windows shut. Those who have some place to go hurry on their way. Against the cold, against the wet, against the dark. Yeah, I stayed in Aarhus. I stayed in Aarhus for a third of my life almost. Helping raise my two kids. And when they got to be in their teens, almost, then I moved to Copenhagen. That was about 15 years in Aarhus, 16 years. So when my kids were 12 and 15, I moved with my new, we'd been together for 7 years, and she came to live in Aarhus, and then we moved back to Copenhagen to her Andal's apartment. But we'd been together 7 years. That was twice as long as any relationship. And I pretty much figured that this was where I wanted to stay for the rest of my life. But when we got back to Copenhagen, I was feeling myself being pushed out. Losing my dignity, and we went to couple therapy, and there we couldn't make any progress, so we continued the therapy one-on-one, and yeah.
Hans Christian Andersen,
who are these unformed and delicate creatures. But even they have family, connection, society. Even they have someone to talk to and steal from. What dark liquid ushers us through the night? What green liquor keeps us?
And then when we pan out and they see what it actually is.
What green hypnotic liquids? Fire water.
Keep it, yeah, shake it and then still.
Electrifying the mind. I lived in Frederiksberg for 18 months, And when I went to the commune to get some assistance, to get a place to stay, they told me that I had no tilknytning to Frederiksberg. That I should live there 2 years before I had tilknytning to commune. In Frederiksberg commune, I was just sent from the first floor to the third floor, and then back to the second floor and up to the third floor, from Boer service to Sudaupeng to Eltmuli Kantor, and everyone just sent me to another office, and everyone finally came with the same answer, that I had no tilknytning to Frederiksberg. So, in November of 2006, I'd already paid my rent to my ex and had to get out, and was offered a room at the local herberg in Frederiksberg, and was very glad just to have a room, in spite of the fact that it was an institution with a lot of people with a lot of real serious problems they were dealing with. They were kind enough to let me move in November without paying the month's rent, because I had already paid my rent and in my ex's flat. A few weeks later I got a job doing some music, and because they had let me stay there for free, I took the money I made from this music gig, and then every night I bought fruit and a couple kilos of oranges or bananas or apples, and left them up in the big room where people hung out and watched TV. The staff approved of that, and I stayed there for some months. But the challenge was here, trying to keep your dignity, and trying to keep your things together, and trying to keep the sense that you have some kind of control and over your living situation, that you have some kind of control over your life, and are maintaining a certain level of dignity in an institution that proved to be very difficult. It was there, and it went red. It was there, but the rage and the red Christmas presents. From the children in August. What lost, what gained, where am I? Now I remember. Our guardian angel still watches over us. The breakup after 7 years was also in its own way traumatic. I had a violent episode at work where I got an Arbeitsskade at the same time. So this was coupled with visits to doctors and special doctors and getting scannings, and then I lost pretty much contact with my kids, in the sense that I couldn't have any place where they could come and visit me anymore. And again, I was shocked that the commune was not interested in helping me to find decent housing to maintain contact with my children. Here is my treasure of 20 years in Europe. The things I could save in large cardboard boxes, my books, my papers. Late at night, after I started putting fruit on the table, then I would go around opening the blinds on the windows, because when everything was dark and everything was kind of stuffy, and I found a bunch of books at the place where I was living that people had thrown out, so I dragged them down there and started putting more books in the library. And then a woman who's lived there for 5 years, she started marking all the books with a stamp that said, Herberg Library, and she was organizing them alphabetically, and we started, again, open the windows and open the drapes, and I found more and more books to put in there. And so we were turning this room into a living room, as well as the weight training room into living rooms where before they had been locked down and unused. Little by little I got things opened up so there was light in the rooms and light in the more air, more udlufning, just air and light all help fight this institutionalized milieu, help make things more human and homey and healthy. At the same time, it's a very harsh milieu. People are langt ut både i deres egen personlige traumer og forskellige slags misbrug. You have to constantly define your borders in this kind of environment. People are always coming up and crossing the borders and crossing your own personal space, and even people who were hired as pedagogues there were often too personal, too close, too curious, trying to make you a form of entertainment for them, instead of learning to respect the fact that this is actually where you live, and this is actually your home, and if you're not obligated to entertain the staff, but this too would eventually become a problem. We find more and more in the workplace and in neuroscience as well, that people spend more time in the unconscious than they think they do. They spend less time in any sort of conscious state than we would like to believe. In every workplace, personal agendas are constantly being worked out rather than professional ones. So it's not particular just to this environment, but people who are given a little bit of power over another human being, over their resources, over their the things they need for daily life, can very easily abuse those powers and put themselves in kind of a higher status in relation to their clients. They put themselves in a higher status, and to do that, they have to keep their clients in a state of helplessness and insecurity, and just with the use of language, they can focus on the plight of the client. People with places to go, people with clear ideas of what they're doing, people on urgent missions, going to where, moving from what, people hurrying off to their loved ones. People with someone to kiss. People with somewhere to be. People with lives intact, with systems intact. Everyone with somewhere to go. How does my aimless existence fit into this world of activity? My world on its head. We watch with wonder arrivals and departures, who have nowhere to go. The waiting means not so much. We scavenge the city. when every time they addressed one of the clients, they pointed out or focused on the client's lack of things or need for help, or these mantras were, har du brug for noget? Skal du have hjælp til det? Mangler du noget? And in this way they were dehumanizing the clients, the people who were homeless and the people who were there to be reestablished and help them get on to their own life, to their own home. This is meant to be just a temporary place, although there were people living there for 5-7 years who again were not being helped to move on, but were fast lost in this kind of helpless client state. Engaging the clients on their level, this seemed to be a bit lacking. Clients were very much allowed to, lie in their room for several days without anybody really noticing, or be very, very ill and quickly taken to the hospital for a few weeks to get better again. And the clients were very keen about keeping their various medicines going, helping each other get through the day. If one guy didn't have some pills, he could trade them, and there was a great deal of honor and fairness in this system. When a client came in who was a kind of a thief or a rip-off artist, he was very quickly marginalized, and the other clients who knew each other and had good dealings with each other were on a daily basis helping each other with money or pills, and a lot of it was about their own misbrew management or their own medication management. And in that sense there was a certain camaraderie there. This aimlessness is killing time, while those who have a place to go hurry through the darkness, hurry through the rain, hurry through the pool of the night. Where am I going? From oasis to oasis. From the first draft to the next dosage, to the next dosage, from oasis to oasis. Time again. This ritual, this routine. In search of an echo, in search of a reflection. We began playing music because I was actively playing guitar, and it turned out that my a roommate that I shared a common room with was an excellent autodidactic guitar player. Another guy who lived farther down the hall got out his guitar, and he actually started teaching some of the guys chords, and he was also an extremely good electric guitar player. And Banjo, who's a real good street kind of bodega troubadour, also started playing together. So we began, as my neighbor used to say, when I'm playing guitar, I forget to take my medication, or I forget to take my drugs. They would get high on the music, and just it was a really, for us, a really livening and inspiring thing. But again, this kind of felicity or party happiness was kind of feared or frowned upon by the pedagogues. They sensed that things were out of control when they heard laughter or music, or just that that it was something that was unwelcome in their institution. Footsteps in the night, under the moon's glaring light. It's time to watch the moon rise. Time to watch it slide through the sky. Time to consider the universe at large. How we know so much about far away and long ago. How we know so little about here and now. How we came down from the trees 1,000,000 years ago. $2 million. 3 million. Light years ago in another life. Seemingly returned to the trees. Lost the key to the cave. What universe is this? Cold lights and fiery explosions. Upstairs by the television set where everyone sat and watched TV all day, they had this horrible poster of a bulldog with a sad bulldog face. And the slogan read, "Same shit, different day." And I moved that poster because I thought that just sent a really bad signal to all these sad, lonely, homeless people, that they had to, while they were looking at television in the corner of their eye, they had to look at this sad dog and that said "same shit, different day." And I thought that was just such a wrong signal to send that I hid that picture and took the other picture from the library and put it up that was a little more combed out and cubistic, and then put up St. George and the Dragon in the library. And I was just, trying to, again, create both among my neighbors and among the staff a sense that people need to be treated with great respect, especially when they're down, especially when they're in this place where they have little and need support. And yet the institutional spirit of the place wouldn't really allow it. It would allow this up to a point, and then we were re-institutionalized, so to speak. Flowers appeared, pictures, colorful, positive pictures and flowers, and it was really the day I actually put up this little picture of a heart that my daughter painted upstairs, and I left it there for about 24 hours, fearing it might get damaged, but thinking, well, this is a heart that suddenly appeared. And that seemed to infuriate the staff more than anything. At that point, I was asked to throw out all the books in the library I was donating and take down the pictures and return it to institutional status. People with places to go. Ave Maria. Is this the speed at which life passes by? Who are these strangers? with their strange and respectless glances, hypnotized by the pornography and seduction. In the graveyard at dawn, spring's first bright blossoms, life comes back. In connection with my work injury, I had just gotten an injection of steroids called a blockade. And the doctor didn't tell me that this would have the effect of speeding me up or giving some kind of emotional side effect. So when I came in one night and saw one of the pedagogues behaving in a way that I thought was unprofessional towards the people, I was very upset. My mother, I had just found out my mother had just fallen and had a brain damage and was now essentially a vegetable. I was in treatment with the special doctors. Yeah, still struggling with the divorce and with the pain in my shoulder. And when I yelled at this woman, I just said, "Why are you flirting with these two guys? You know, there's people downstairs who you know, help or do something or visit." And I felt she was flirting and behaving inappropriately. Well, I was told that I would get 1 day's quarantine for having shouted at her, and then I ran out of the house and I wouldn't stand and talk to anybody. I just jumped off the balcony and came back the next day, and then they said I had 7 days quarantine. And I said, okay, but I need to have my musical instruments because this is how I'm able to survive. And they refused to give me my musical instruments, my guitar, and so I had to call the police to get them to give me my instruments so I could have my music while I was on quarantine. So they shoved some papers in my hand and said, come back in 7 days, which I did. And it turned out that when I did not show up at 10 in the morning on the 7th day, they threw me out of the herberg permanently and emptied my room and dumped my shit down in the basement. So they said, come back in a few days after this quarantine and we could talk about it again. I went back to the commune. So after 4 more days, by this time it was like 2 weeks quarantine where I'd been living on the street and thankfully with some friends. I came back for a meeting in which I said, yeah, I'm ready to come back. And they showed me a paper which said I must always stand and listen to everything they said. I must not walk away from anybody when any of their pedagogues while they're talking to me. And I said, sure, I'll sign it. And they said, no, go away and come back in 4 days and then you can see if you really want to sign it. And when I showed this paper to the lady at the commune, she called them up and told them to get me back in. And at that point I just had finally gotten some money together where I could possibly have moved in my own place, but I had 1 day to find a place, and I just burned a lot of this money just getting out of there the next day because I wouldn't be able to stand there and just listen to the bullshit they were throwing my way, the respectless way they speak and the hoy-tiddly, self-helly. I knew I wouldn't be able to do that anyway, so I finally was in a position where I could have actually moved properly, but I was forced into just fleeing for my life, putting some stuff in storage, moving out to Kastrup into a stinking cellar. doors. Lock the door. Remember to lock the door. Did I lock the door? Are you sure the door's locked? Remember to lock the door. Is the door locked? Here are my things. Is everything here? Papers, books, children's drawings. 20 years reduced to souvenirs of half a life. How to keep it hanging together. It's more expensive to live on the street than it is to have a place, because the things you buy are expensive. Staying with people costs money. They don't want to just let you in. You have to pay rent to them too. Eating is very expensive again, because you can't prepare your own food and your diet naturally suffers. I spent a night or two at one of these pensionnats down in Norbro, in a room with a pervert who's rocking the bunk beds for hours, and then when they found out I actually used to live in Copenhagen, they told me it was illegal for me to stay at the pensionnat. So homeless people, if they're actually enrolled in a herberg or on quarantine or have had an address in town, they're not allowed to stay at any of these cheap hotels that are designed for tourists. So I was in the middle of quarantine. I was also kicked out of a pensionnat because they found out I was on quarantine somehow. I was staying, in the subway some nights. You can sleep in the subway in the weekends, just drive it back and forth, just to keep dry, keep warm. Friday, Saturday. Where am I? Do I have my things? Wake up. Wake up. Here we approach the end of the line. This was early spring, so it was very rainy, and the biggest challenge is just to keep your feet dry, just to make sure you have clean socks, just to make sure you have dry socks. Found out I could put these little plastic bags from the supermarket, you put fruit in and put them around my socks, inside my shoe, and that would at least keep my socks dry, even though my shoes might be soaking wet. Half a moon, half a moon. There she flies, our bright, blind brother, our silent sister, our tidal spoon. Another day through which you gasp, another night in which to grasp. It fits the hand that holds on for dear life. You become quickly adapted to this, I would call it, institutional life. For me, it's as close as I've ever been to being in prison, in the sense that you have a very small room to quarters, which is like a little cell. Here is shelter from the wind. Here is warmth and light and music. tala ont om nun mennesker, heller de gå om eller dem jeg kender. Jeg vil ikke tale ondt om nun mennesker, men heller de gå om eller dem jeg kender.
The sun is going down, the cold, cold wind is blowing in a strange and foreign town. Black night has fallen.
Steady. Focus.
Oh, how man hates to be alone. Another day has come.
The words, the poems, the flowers. Picture of the love.
Oh, how man hates to be alone. Another day has come and gone.
World out of control. Now I'm ready to record this. Ready to piece together the images. To and from, back and again. All the smiling temptations. Where am I? Now I remember. Some dignity can be saved. Some sense of identity can be preserved. The melody mournful, the echo fading. Now I remember. This is what it's like to be on the street. Apocalyptic loneliness. Like these dreams where you're the last person on earth. I am running around with these little China books and writing down notes and having other people draw pictures and write notes and poems. And I was copying these pages to make a book of my journeys and through the night and wanderings. Here was a problem, a conflict solution diagram written by one of my neighbors who had a beautifully mapped out how different elements have different values. The pedagogues hear music and think things are out of control. The guys play music and think things are getting better. and how we could discuss these things and at some point find on this kind of Mobius strip a way to actually come together by better understanding how these different activities were interpreted by the pedagogues on one side, by the inhabitants, the clients on the other. And we were really working in ways to come into dialogue with the people, but there really was no dialogue. There were several people who were good listeners, but in the authoritarian system there was no way to they were powerless. Analyzing our own statements. Vem talar du till? Vad snackar du om? Var befinner du dig hen? And the sarcasm that some of the pedagogues used was pretty devastating for me personally. And the sarcastic possibility, the meaning of sarcasm, why people use it. And Danish people use sarcasm when they think they're being ironic. They've somehow forgotten the difference between sarcasm and irony. To institutionalize, all you need is insufficient light, no laughter, stale air, trang, indifference, unchanging, no music. Thing management. Chain smoking and cold coffee, pain pills, wart scalpels. My children live and love me, I love them, where are they? Must clean. Doorknobs, door handles, computers, remote control, alienated. My daughter's heart. Years. Books and papers. Here's a place small and clean enough to live. Here's a place light and airy. Here are the essentials, medical records, the children. Where are the children? Lost in time. Spring harvest. We take them by surprise, by departing by day's light. Sun back on track, our sphere tilts toward equinox and beyond, as shadows loosen their grip and shorten. Dusks and dawns draw out, and green shoots spire. But it's not in the deepest shade of this pool of space, but in the shallows, more than in sight of land, sand within foot's grasp. It's here we slip, not fearing so much water's clasp as the airy weight of earth's embrace. From Don Quixote de la Mancha, his sidekick who rides the donkey, the silly guy who says everything wrong, had this quote. He says, "As my master says, there is nothing cheaper than kind words." Mother Teresa of the television, while the dying lie in their shit 10 feet below, the pedagogues sat up and zapped and zapped and zapped and enjoyed the company of their clients. Dead man walking. The other ghosts drift through my field of vision. The junkie's strongest addiction at the height of the high is the echo from their own vocal cavern, a confirmation of their identity, a confirmation of continual existence. Dead man walking. The strongest addiction is the sound of one's own voice, confirmation of identity and continual existence. De vid du ik nu om. Hier har vi nu de heather huke, de vid du ik nu om. De existeer kun hier I landet. De bestow a med og varm. Små livende lus skal til du vid, de vid du ik nu om. Og le fra vinters bitre ånd, og en streif af kroppens fromme. Her har vi dansk ironi, vi moras med det faktisk, men glemte har vi forskelt mellem det og det sarkastisk. Her har vi vores egen dansk humør, og det sort som cool. Men fordi du ved ikke noget om det, you must be a fool. Fordi du som en udybt I hulens mange dyder, det ved ikke noget om takt og ton, ikke noget om sprogs finesser, så du ikke ligesom os dansker, og egentlig ikke noget mennesker.